We are back live once again. NXT Stand and Deliver has just gone off the air. We have a brand new NXT champion. He is him. He is Carmelo Hayes. And it's so strange, isn't it, watching NXT events now, because they are always going to be judged in comparison to what NXT used to be, right? And it's not the black and gold era of NXT anymore. And these don't feel like takeover-esque events, and they're just not going to be that, are they? They're not going to be those sort of big takeover, that was an amazing show. And that was kind of what this was. There were matches on this show that I enjoyed. There were matches that I thought were fun. There's a couple of matches on here that I would recommend people to go and watch, particularly the North American Championship match. The Johnny Gargano match was good, but it was just, I mean, it's kind of that, isn't it? It was a bit flat. I mean, I sympathize with the crowd, because the crowd, I don't think, helped this event, because they were particularly quiet. They were very, very, very quiet. I understand that on the West Coast in LA, it's early. I mean, when this show kicked off, it was like 10 a.m. So think about going to a professional wrestling show and being full of energy, full of vigor, especially when you know later on, okay, we're going to have a big show later on in the day. It's called WrestleMania. We've got to keep our energy for that. And also, a really good point was sort of brought up during the watch along that we just did, that a lot of the tickets that were probably sold to go to this specific NXT event, they're probably combo packages. Therefore, you know, they purchased them in addition to their WrestleMania tickets or their Monday Night Raw tickets or their SmackDown Hall of Fame tickets, whatever that may be. So a lot of people might not have been totally familiar with a lot of these NXT stars and the storylines that have been going into it. And it kind of just felt like that. It felt like an arena full of people that, you know, some people they were familiar with, some people they weren't, some things they cared about, some things they really, really didn't. And at points, it was just a bit flat. And again, it's not to say the show was bad. There were points that I don't think made a ton of sense. But again, that's kind of par for the course with NXT at the moment. That's kind of par for the course with NXT under Shawn Michaels. Is quite gimmick heavy, focusing on angles as opposed to maybe some of the in-ring stuff. But you know, it was okay. It was okay. I think the ending of the show is the right thing to do, even though clearly there is a bigger plan in place for Bron Breakker, because he was heavily protected in that finish. I think obviously a portion of the audience there knows about the situation with Rick Steiner over the weekend, and because of that, we're booing Bron Breakker, which I feel a bit bad for him for, because he can't do anything about that. But I thought he handled it well, and I thought he also won the people over inside the arena as well, those that were making some noise. But let's get into the matches, and then we can talk about the main event and the ramifications and all that kind of stuff. So on the kickoff show, we had the 8-person tag team match, Chase University on the line. You had Tyler Bate and Chase University, that being Andre Chase, Duke Hudson, and Thea Hale. They defeated Schism, which of course consists of Joe Gacy, Jagger Reed, Rip Fowler, and Ava, the daughter of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Ava, obviously making her WWE in-ring debut. They won that match by pinfall. The angle going into this one is that Duke Hudson may have been persuaded by Schism. He may have been recruited by Joe Gacy, and he was the one that had decided to put, you know, the control of Chase University on the line and all that kind of stuff. So they build to a point in the match where it looks like he's betrayed Chase University, and he's decided to align himself with the Schism. He's given a shirt, he puts the shirt on, but it was very clear what they were doing, because they took forever and a day to play this one out. I mean, he stood with Schism, then he slowly backed behind him, he ripped the shirt off like he was Hulk Hogan, and eventually they get the victory, that being Chase University. So Andre Chase still has control of his fictional university. Honestly, for as goofy as that sounds, and I know that does sound quite goofy what I'm saying there, it was fine. Like I mean, it was fine. It was good. You know, for a kickoff match, if that was on the main show, you'd probably go, "Oh, what's going on with that?" It was a kickoff match. It was fine. You know, it was well done. As far as Ava, very clear she is incredibly green. There is no doubt about that. The expectation on her is always going to be massive because she's The Rock's daughter. Can she improve? We'll have to wait and see. She's still incredibly young. I think she was the youngest signing in WWE history. So she's got plenty of time on her side. She has been plagued with knee injuries during her time in NXT. I think she's undergone surgery at least 2 or 3 times on her knees. So if her knees can hold up and she continues to get training, then we'll have to wait and see. I didn't see anything in the match where I went, oh my goodness, Ava Ray, she's going to be the next Rock. She's not going to be the next Rock because The Rock's one of one. She can be the next Ava or the first Ava, and then maybe we'll see where she goes from there. But I didn't see a ton from her. Again, it's very clear she's incredibly green, but to improve, you've got to work matches, and she did that just well this evening. She was protected, so that was fine. Again, for a kickoff match, it was fine. The actual show itself, then the main premium live event kicks off with the NXT Women's Championship ladder match, and surprisingly, we have a new NXT Women's Champion, but it's not who you would think it might be. I think most people assume that if Roxanne Perez wasn't going to be retaining the championship, which I think quite a few people thought she would. If Roxanne Perez wasn't going to retain the title, it would be Tiffany Stratton. That would be the next NXT Women's Champion. That was the direction clearly they were building to before what happened to Roxanne happened, and then they had to pivot and they went to the ladder match and they did all that kind of stuff. But Indi Hartwell is the brand new NXT Women's Champion thanks to an assist from her husband Dexter Lumis. Now, this was surprising. That was a surprising finish that I don't think a lot of people, certainly myself, saw coming. I really didn't see Indi Hartwell winning this one. She's kind of been a bit in flux because she's one of those people that is still a remainer from the black and gold era of NXT, but for whatever reason, those in charge, whether it was Vince McMahon previously, and now, to be honest, even to an extent Triple H, don't really want her up on the main roster, which again is surprising considering you've now got Johnny Gargano and Dexter Lumis and Candice LeRae on the main roster. And they did have a reuniting later on in the evening. We'll talk about that in just a second. But Indi Hartwell wins, which means, of course, she's going to be sticking around for a while in NXT. The surprising thing could be, look, that Roxanne Perez might be getting called up to the main roster. I mean, she's incredibly, incredibly young. Again, they call her the prodigy, and that's for a reason. And I would have thought maybe they'd want to take maybe just a little bit more time, but maybe they just need bodies on the main roster. Maybe they thought, look, we're going to get the title off Roxanne Perez, and she's going up. She's been on NXT television for about, a year now anyway. I would have thought maybe they'd have taken a little bit longer. So that was surprising. I don't know what it means for Dexter Lumis. I would assume he's still going to be on the main roster, maybe. I mean, there have been rumors about Tommaso Ciampa coming back soon and possibly reuniting with Johnny Gargano, and if they are going to go in that direction, maybe that does leave Dexter Lumis with not a lot to do, but that would seem like a step backwards for him if he went back to NXT. But that's not to say that he's doing a lot on the main roster anyway. So maybe they just do a thing, and we've seen this quite a bit, where stars on Raw and NXT crossover because they're both on the USA Network, and maybe whilst Dexter Lumis isn't doing all that much, he's going to be appearing more on NXT, and they're going to find a way to pay off the Indi Hartwell Dexter Lumis storyline, because that is something, in fairness, that people have been speaking about a lot. You know, Indi Hartwell remained with WWE, Dexter Lumis was fired, he got brought back, but they didn't really address it all when Dexter Lumis came back, and people rightfully so said, well, what does it mean? What's Dexter Lumis going to do then? What's the plan with Dexter Lumis? Is he going back to NXT? Are they divorced? Like, what with all of that? What are they going to do? And seemingly, maybe this is their way of saying we are going to sort of pay it off, or we are going to conclude it, whether it's on the next episode of NXT, Indi Hartwell slapped Dexter Lumis in the face, said, where were you for ages? I'm now the NXT Women's Champion. I don't need you. You helped me get what I needed. That was the NXT Women's Championship, and I'm moving on. Wouldn't even be shocked. Wouldn't even be shocked. It must also be said that they continued the feud between Gigi Dolin and Jacy Jayne, the split up a toxic attraction in this one. Gigi Dolin had the match won. Jacy Jayne came out, stopped Gigi Dolin from winning, pushed her. She lands on a ladder. Obviously, Jacy Jayne had suffered a separated shoulder during their match at Roadblock, which was a really bad match, actually. But they're going to continue with that one, so that's the direction that they're going in. But yeah, it was a surprise, certainly, to see Indi Hartwell leave as the NXT Women's Champion. No doubt about that. See a couple of your comments. Palmerius says, smash a like on the video. Indeed, if you haven't already, we've got over 30 people watching. So if you haven't already, click a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe as well, bottom right-hand corner. We are going to be doing, of course, it's WrestleMania Saturday. We are going to be doing a WrestleMania watch-along this evening and a WrestleMania post-show. Same tomorrow as well. We're going to be doing a WrestleMania watch-along, WrestleMania Night 2 watch-along, and a WrestleMania post-show too. So a really busy weekend here on the channel. So if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner, and click a like on the like button too. Arsenal dead, ha ha ha, says, what time does Mania start, brother? We're going to be going live at 12:45 a.m. That's British summer time over here in the UK for a 1 a.m. start of WrestleMania. It's 1 a.m. British time it starts. In America, it's 8 p.m. Eastern time is when it starts. But depending on where you are in the world, if you're in the UK, 1 a.m. British time, we'll be live at 12:45. But yes, Indi Hartwell is indeed the new NXT Women's Champion. Next match was for the NXT Tag Team Championship, and surprisingly, this one went actually the shortest of the evening, which is kind of shocking considering maybe the Women's Tag Team Championship match. But it went 8 minutes and 11 seconds. Gallus retained the NXT Tag Team Championships against the Creed brothers and the family, that being Tony D'Angelo and Stax. The finish of this one was that Joe Coffey has made his return to NXT, supporting his brother Mark Coffey and Wolfgang as they retain the Tag Team Championships. I've got really nothing to say about this one, to be honest. It was just really kind of nothing. I'm a big fan of the Creed brothers. I felt that maybe the Creed brothers would leave this one as the Tag Team Champions. They set up a thing later on in the evening with Tony D'Angelo and Stax facing off against Pretty Deadly on NXT this week because they had a backstage segment with Pretty Deadly as the hosts. By the way, just a side note, actually, talking about Pretty Deadly, them hosting the event was that they had a couple of segments, and they were bizarre segments. One which was, we're outside Bron Breaker's dressing room. Shall we knock on the door? No, we're not going to knock on the door. That was the segment. I mean, utterly pointless. Utterly pointless, that segment. And the next one was, they're going to do the same thing outside Carmelo Hayes' dressing room, but they were interrupted by Trick Williams. So you go, oh, okay. And then again, the next one, they had a confrontation with the family backstage, but it was just very, very pointless. I did not understand that at all. But okay, that's fine. So yes, and that's a side point for the family. Again, I thought the Creed brothers would win. They didn't, but there's not really a lot to say. Joe Coffey's back, so Gallus is back to full strength. Look, obviously, I'm going to be biased being a bit of a Brit and say that I'm happy to see them succeeding, but it just really didn't do anything for me, this match at all. And the crowd were pretty flat into it. There was a botch in it as well, where it could have been a really, really impressive spot whereby I think it was Julius Creed had two people essentially on his shoulders. It was like a double doomsday device, and Brutus was going to jump off the top and knock them both over, I guess, but he somehow managed to miss them both, and it looked like Wolfgang had hurt himself. Fortunately, I don't think he did, but yeah, it was just a bit of a flat match, honestly. And again, the crowd, like I said, was very quiet throughout the evening, and this one was an example of them being very, very quiet. So Gallus retained. They're still NXT Tag Team Champions, and who their future challengers will be, I'm not sure. We got over 40 people watching, so if you haven't already, click that like button. Be sure to subscribe as well, bottom right-hand corner. Let's do a quick subscriber check to see where we're at the moment. We're currently at 10,425. Let's see if we can get to 10,430, just 5. If you haven't already, subscribe, bottom right hand corner, because as I said, big night this evening, big weekend ahead of us with WrestleMania on the horizon. Simon Slevin says, what time does WrestleMania kickoff start? It depends where you are in the world. Of course, if you're in the United States, 7 p.m. Eastern time it kicks off. Over here, that's 12 p.m. British summer time. As I mentioned, we'll be going live at 12:45 British time. There doesn't appear to be any matches on the WrestleMania kickoff show. If a match is just about to happen, we'll go live earlier. But as of right now, it appears that there isn't going to be any matches on the kickoff show. Next match was probably the match of the evening, that being the 5-way for the NXT North American Championship. Wesley is still the NXT North American Champion. He defeated Axiom, Dragon Lee, Ilja Dragunov, and JD McDonagh via pinfall. Match went longest, probably to no surprise. Brilliant. I thought it was a really, really, really good match. Match of the show. This is where the show did really start to hit its stride. You had this match, and then you had the Unsanctioned match after, and two real strong matches. Two matches that felt kind of takeover-esque, particularly this one. The takeover style match under Triple H in the black and gold era was very much a spot fest, and I know people sometimes don't really like that style. That's what this match was, and that's what it was always going to be, realistically. I mean, let's face it, if you look at the participants in this one, if you look at the participants in this match, in Wesley, Dragon Lee, JD McDonagh, Axiom, and Ilja Dragunov, it's always going to be spot. And the finishing sequence itself probably lasted like 10 minutes or something like that. But I thought it was excellent. Wesley gets the victory, surprisingly on Ilja Dragunov. Dragunov seemingly had the match won by hitting Dragon Lee. The parts of the finish actually quite interested me quite a bit, because what you saw is Ilja Dragunov seemingly having the newest person on the NXT roster, that being Dragon Lee, who is on the biggest contract in NXT, defeated. And what you had instead is Wesley suddenly manages to hit something on Dragunov, gets the pinfall victory. But when they did the highlight package after the match, and again, the match itself was practically a highlight package. When they did that package showing the highlights of the match, whilst Wesley wins the match, and whilst he's still the champion, this match really was all about Ilja Dragunov. That's what it was. This was a showcase of Ilja Dragunov. And my feeling is that Dragunov will be the next NXT North American champion, or we could see a situation where maybe Dragunov challenges for the NXT Championship, depending on what does happen with Bron Breakker. Because even after the match, you had Wesley celebrating, holding up the championship, but the camera was focused on Dragunov in the corner. Dragunov's in the corner. He's staring across, looking at Wesley. This match felt like more of a showcase for Ilja Dragunov, particularly in those final stretches. He was involved in everything. He was really, truly the glue in all of this. So I would say keep an eye on Ilja Dragunov coming out of this match, because that's what it felt like was the main importance of it, was to showcase him. And I don't know, again, because you could do a story where you say Dragunov, he had not only the match won, but he also had Dragon Lee defeated. So we could maybe enter a feud where we see Dragon Lee versus Dragunov, or we could see Dragunov just keep going to Wesley and said, well, I had the match won. But then Wesley can say, well, I pinned you. So I don't know if it's a case of, again, building towards Wesley versus Dragunov. I don't know if it's a case of maybe turning heel for Dragunov. But at the same time, the crowd, this was what the crowd was into. The crowd was into this one and the Gargano match the most. And no surprise, it was the two best matches of the night. But if I had to choose between what I thought was the match of the night, I'd probably say this one. And that's merely, I suppose, living up to expectations, is most people thought that this was going to be the standout match for the evening, and indeed it was. I think Wesley is having a pretty spectacular NXT North American Championship reign when you really think about it. You know, the match against Dijak, I mean, the ladder match as well that he had previously. He's a top talent. And this was a match that a lot of people were looking forward to, and indeed it was a match that undoubtedly, no doubt, delivered. So big match, stand and deliver. This was one that indeed did deliver. Speaking of matches that delivered, the next match was the Unsanctioned match, Johnny Gargano versus Grayson Waller. Johnny Gargano, I guess, last appearance ever in NXT. Certainly that's what he was hyping it up as going into this event this weekend. And again, it's not, in terms of ranking it, in terms of Johnny Gargano takeover classics, nowhere near those, but certainly still a really enjoyable match and the right outcome. Johnny Gargano defeats Grayson Waller via submission, and when you do this kind of story and you have this kind of match, you kind of have to have the babyface win. And I know the argument could be made, but what does that do for Grayson Waller? Because I mean, we don't know what Grayson Waller is going to be doing post-WrestleMania. He could be one of the names getting called up to the main roster, or he could be sticking around on NXT. One thing's for sure, Johnny Gargano is not going to be on NXT. So logically, you would think, well, surely he would do the favors on the way out. But the way this storyline is played out is is that Grayson Waller has hammered the authority figure, the lovable babyface authority figure in Shawn Michaels over and over and over and over and over again. So you already want to see him get his comeuppance anyway. On top of that, he brings back Johnny Gargano, a beloved babyface, the heart and soul of NXT. And the last time we saw him on NXT, he was taken out by this heel. So you already want to see him get his revenge. And on top of that, they even enhanced the storyline by making it personal by having Grayson Waller show up to the house of the babyface in question, that being Johnny Gargano, and attack him and mock his wife and his kids and endanger his family. So there was no choice really but for Johnny Gargano to win this one. Johnny Gargano had to win this match because the story can't be the heel's rights and the heel gets away with it in that situation. And they played it, I think, to perfection. Some really nice spots, but realistically what it was for the large majority of the match was Johnny Gargano beating the hell out of Grayson Waller and Candice LeRae beating the hell out of Grayson Waller. Grayson Waller's body, by the end of this match, looked like he had been to a butcher shop. I mean, it literally looked like that. His back was black and blue with marks, particularly from the kendo stick. I don't know if it was the first few shots from Gargano. I don't know if it was the shots from Candice LeRae or the shots after that. I mean, Candice LeRae hit Grayson Waller so hard with some of those kendo stick shots that, like, sometimes they always do this, don't they, with the kendo stick shots, and then they show the picture on Instagram or social media, and they've got the marks, they've got the bruises on their back, and you go, oh my goodness, that's so devastating. But his were happening in real time. Sometimes it can take a few minutes or a couple of hours, and then you go, they look horrible. Grayson Waller's back immediately looked rough. Really, really rough immediately. And he had to just take the punishment. The finish I thought was great as well, whereby Johnny Gargano basically puts a chair around the neck of Grayson Waller, and instead of the chair to the head, because you can't do that nowadays, and you shouldn't do that nowadays because of concussion, he just hits the chair that's around the neck of Grayson Waller, so it spins round, and it looked like Waller had maybe had a cut in his ear because it was bleeding at the time. That looked a bit rough. And then Gargano gets the Gargano escape and Grayson Waller taps out. Again, I thought it was a good match. Not a Gargano takeover classic, but probably the second best match on the show. The crowd were into it. I think that's the key thing too. Crowd were probably into this. They maybe made, I think they might have just been in the NXT North American Championship match more, but that kind of built their interest because it was just a superb match. This one they were into from the start because they were familiar with the story. They were familiar with Johnny Gargano. They'd seen the stuff on social media. Even if they hadn't watched the product, they'd seen Gargano return. They'd seen Grayson Waller invade his home and all that kind of stuff. So they liked what they saw, and I think it delivered for the fans. Again, I don't think you can compare it to the previous Gargano NXT classics, but I thought it did well. Grayson Waller was also very, very, very fortunate at one point not to get seriously injured, because they did a spot where Grayson Waller set up a sort of bed of chairs outside the ring. And essentially the spot was that Gargano was going to suplex Waller from the inside of the ring to the outside. And on the face of it, it would be a fairly routine spot. It's a suplex. Keep your legs straight, keep your balance, rotate, land as flat as possible. The chairs will kind of break your fall. It should be fine. The issue is Gargano goes to lift him, and for whatever reason, Waller can't get up straight enough, and his legs don't extend out. So he's kind of bent over, and Gargano, because of that, the balance is kind of thrown off, and he nearly drops him. Waller just about in the end just rotates enough that he can land on the chairs sort of safely as possible, but that could have been disastrous. And to be honest, I won't be surprised if coming out of this one it's like he's feeling it, because I think he probably would be feeling this one, because again, but that's the right thing. From a storyline purpose, it makes sense. If you're a heel to that degree, I mean, Grayson Waller's thing is, for months he's been again criticizing the authority figure. 18 months ago he attacked Gargano. He's disrespected his family. It's an unsanctioned match. Like, that's the point, is that it should be violent, and the heel had to get his comeuppance there. So I think that was the right move. That was the right move. The crowd were into it. Good final goodbye, I guess, for Johnny Gargano in NXT. Not that he's doing all that much on the main roster, it must be said either, but a good bye-bye for Johnny Gargano. And I don't know what's next for Grayson Waller, honestly. He's challenged for the NXT Championship. Would he go into a feud with Carmelo Hayes? When you've just come out of the NXT Championship picture, does it make sense for him to go straight back in there? He's been in NXT a while. Of course, he could continue, I suppose, the feud with Gargano if he goes up to the main roster. That's a possibility. But it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with that. After the match as well, and once you knew that Indi Hartwell was winning the championship, won the championship earlier on in the evening, and Dexter Lumis was there, it was very obvious they were probably going to go in this direction. You had a reuniting of the way, minus one person, minus a very important one person, that being Austin Theory, who, of course, is probably already at SoFi Stadium. He's going to be kicking off WrestleMania in just a few hours' time against none other than John Cena, one of the biggest WWE superstars of all time for the United States Championship. So Austin Theory was not there for a reuniting of the way as he's preparing for that huge WrestleMania match later on this evening. But you had Johnny Gargano, Candice LeRae, Indi Hartwell, Dexter Lumis out there. Again, I don't know if that's just, again, like a closing the chapter of that, but particularly for the Indi Hartwell, Dexter Lumis part of it, it doesn't feel like they've paid that off just yet. So I'm going to be interested to see where they do go from there. We've got over 50 people watching, so if you haven't already, be sure to smash a like on the like button. See if we can get to 25, 30 likes. As I mentioned too, be sure to subscribe, bottom right hand corner. We are going to be doing a WrestleMania Night 1 watch along this evening, plus a post show as well. So and also we do our daily wrestling news videos, doing WWE news, AEW news. We're going to have all of the reaction to WrestleMania. Lots of stories going on at the moment. Drew McIntyre, his contract reportedly expiring or not expiring according to some people. Randy Orton, is he going to be back this evening? What's going on with Matt Riddle? Roman Reigns, is he going to retain the championships, or is it Cody Rhodes' time to win the titles at WrestleMania? Some people speculating that Reigns only lifted up the WWE championship as opposed to both championships last night on SmackDown. Are they going to split the titles? This is going to be a really interesting weekend, not just when it comes to WWE and pro wrestling content, but just when it comes to a lot of news stories. Vince McMahon, he's an employee. I don't know if you've seen the picture of him. Jet black hair, pencil mustache. He was at the Hall of Fame last night. It's a wild picture. Be sure to check it out as well. So if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, bottom right hand corner. It's a real interesting time, as mentioned. See if we can get to 425. We're currently at 10,420. So if you haven't already, click subscribe, bottom right hand corner. It would be much appreciated. Next match, penultimate match of the evening, was for the NXT Women's Tag Team Championships. And I spoke about how the crowd was very quiet and very flat. I sympathize, very much sympathize with the people in this position. We have new NXT Women's Tag Team Champions, Alba, Fyre and Isla Dawn, representing the UK, defeated Fallon, Henley and Kiana James. And there is this story that they've been doing whereby Brooke Jensen and Josh Briggs are ringside, and they like Fallon, Henley and Kiana James, and James wanted to use her bag, and I think it was it Brooks said was going to let her use the bag, and Briggs is like, oh no, you can't use the bag, so they don't, and they lose the match. It weren't great. It was not great. The match was very flat. The crowd was very quiet. It's a difficult position to be in, no doubt about it, because the position that they were put in terms of the match order was by design. The crowd are going to be a bit tired. We want to give them a point to rest because they just had Wesley and the NXT North American Championship match, and they just had the Unsanctioned match. Two best matches of the evening. So you've got to let the crowd come down to build them back up for the main event. But they just weren't into it. I wasn't really into it as well. Not necessarily because the match itself was bad. The story just doesn't do anything for me. WWE still is showing that they can't book women's tag team championships either on the developmental brand or the main roster. And I'm happy we've got new tag team champions in terms of two really good workers in Alba, Fyre and Isla Dawn, but it was a placeholder really, and I feel quite bad for them for that, but there's not really much to talk about, and I'm not sure what they do with those NXT Women's Tag Team Championships, and frankly, I'm not sure that WWE, to be honest, know what to do with those NXT Women's Tag Team Championships. And finally, the main event, we have a brand new NXT champion. You would have seen it on the thumbnail and all over social media and on the show if you watched it with us. Carmelo Hayes defeats Bron Breakker for the NXT Championships in 16 minutes and 10 seconds. This is a really curious one. Was not match of the evening. It wasn't better than the North American Championship. Wasn't better than the Unsanctioned match. A very slow start to this one. Very slow start. For the first let's say, half of the match, lots of holds, lots of jockeying for position, lots of posing. And I thought, this one clearly is going to build to a crescendo, but what kind of crescendo is it going to be? And Trick Williams gets sent to the back after Bron Breakker was going for some move, and Trick Williams pulls Carmelo Hayes off to the apron, and that should be a disqualification, but the referee says, you go to the back, and Trick Williams goes to the back, so it's one-on-one. And at that point, I'm thinking, well, clearly then, they're going to do the thing whereby Carmelo Hayes beats Bron Breakker clean, establishes the new guy in NXT. Bron Breakker goes to the main roster. Even though I wasn't totally convinced, because Bron Breakker has been all over. He's been all over the promotional material for NXT Battleground. So part of me does think that maybe he is still going to be around in NXT for maybe a month or so, maybe something like that. But anyway, Trick Williams gets sent to the back, and then we have a ref bump. Now I'm thinking, when it comes to the ref bump, shenanigans. We're getting major shenanigans here, and with shenanigans, that means last-minute booking changes, that means creative uncertainty, that means something. Basically, we ain't getting something clean. The moment the ref gets bumped down, we are not getting a clean finish, and we didn't get a clean finish. So the referee goes down because Bron Breakker spears Carmelo Hayes into the referee. Ref's down. Suddenly, Trick Williams, who remember had been sent to the back earlier, comes back out. Breakker had Carmelo Hayes in a Steiner recliner. Not only does he have him in the submission, so saying, he had him beat, he beat him. Carmelo Hayes taps out. He tapped out. So that's an important thing to think about as well. He beat him. He had him tapped out. He tapped out. Trick Williams jumps back in the ring, hits him with the bout in the back. Carmelo Hayes covers him. Referee does the slow count. No one can do the slow count like Earl Hebner coming up from a ref bump, by the way, but still, he does his best job. Does the 1, 2 and 79/80ths, and he kicks out. Great false finish, great near fall. And I thought, well, okay, they're going to do something where it's just, they're protecting Bron. Not happy really about the tap out thing, because it doesn't really look, because realistically what they've done here is they've said that Carmelo Hayes lost and he had to cheat to win and hit his finish. So it's real protection of Bron Breakker, and keep that in mind. After that near fall, we have a situation where Melo goes up to the top rope, nothing but net leg drop, bang, 1, 2, 3. New champion. So that finish says to me that there is unfinished business there, because that's not clean. I'm not saying that Bron Breakker isn't going to go up to the main roster, because after the match, given what happened after the match, it implies that he's done. Because after the match, he takes the title, he does the Hogan and Ultimate Warrior thing from WrestleMania 6 in Toronto, where he has the belt, gives it to him, raises his arm and says, this is the guy, passing of the torch. But again, from a storyline perspective, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Why wouldn't you be pissed off? The guy cheated and you beat him. That makes no sense. Not only did he give him the championship, he gave him the cabbage, like that. Fist out, like that. They're friends. Why are you friends with him? Because you had him beat, he tapped out, you won the match, you then got screwed because you got hit with the championship. He then hits you with his finish, but, fair play. That makes no sense. That makes no sense to me. Why would he be fine with that? Unless he's like, you got me, you cheated. So there's got to be more there. There has to be some kind of thing on NXT going forward where he says, well, I beat you and you cheated. So at Battleground, we face off inside of a steel cage. You have to beat me properly or something like that. That has to be the outcome here. But at the same time, him raising his hand and giving him the championship implies that he's done. So to me, again, there was a lot of protection for Bron Breakker there, unless they have been told, when it comes to Bron Breakker, you need to protect him heavily because we've got something really big planned for him on the main roster, either at WrestleMania or on Raw on Monday. That is the only thing I can think of why they would protect him to that level and he would still leave the brand. Now, there have been some people suggesting that maybe John Cena defeats Austin Theory for the United States Championship this evening at WrestleMania. But of course, John Cena's not going to stick around because he doesn't wrestle full time anymore. He's got movies to do. And he could do the situation whereby what John Cena does when he's the US champion, he does the open challenge. And maybe he comes out on Raw on Monday, opens the show, says, while I'm here, I'm the US champion. Let's do the open challenge. Bron Breakker answers the open challenge. He beats John Cena on television on Monday Night Raw. He's the United States champion. Maybe that's the direction that they're going in. Or, which I think is maybe more likely, is we still need him in NXT for another month. We've got NXT Battleground to do. That's going to be in Lowell, Massachusetts. So they've got to try and sell tickets for an arena show. We need Bron Breakker there. So we're still going to have that main event. Carmelo Hayes, Bron Breakker. Carmelo Hayes beats him clean there. But by that point, Bron Breakker is already on the main roster. Just because he's on the main roster doesn't mean for a while he can't do both. We have seen that in history with NXT, whereby someone's on the main roster for a bit, but they have to wrap up and tie up loose ends on their storyline in NXT. Because to me, even though the ending implied that it was wrapped up, it's not wrapped up because he won. And any good champion, again, from a storyline perspective, would be like, I won that match. Why aren't you? So that finish to me and the post-match does not make a lot of sense logically. And I know that pro wrestling's, logic in an illogical world or anything like that. So I don't know. But again, overall show, it was good. It was fine. Not an NXT classic by any stretch of the imagination. It's not a takeover show. And it was always going to be difficult with the time of day and what have you. I think some people may have made their final appearance in NXT this evening. Johnny Gargano, obviously. Roxanne Perez, I think, is a really surprising one. So I wouldn't be shocked if she gets called up to the main roster, honestly. Grayson Waller could be one, maybe. I do wonder what's next for him in NXT now. Again, Bron Breakker, I really don't know. Really not sure where that one goes with him, honestly, now. Because, again, to me, that just doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below if you're watching after the fact. We'll get some of your comments up on the screen before we wrap things up here. Let's see. Steffi Jenks says, to be fair, I don't know how Owen gets so many notes down while he's doing the watch long. I don't make any notes. That's the secret. It's all memory. I don't. You couldn't make notes during it. It's just from here. It's thoughts that you make up during the time. Yes. Aston says, I think they're going to do a Bron versus Carmelo rematch where Carmelo beats him clean. I think so. I think there was too much ambiguity in this one, which suggests to me that the plan is, like you said, to build to some form of rematch, because there has to be. That's a question that's left somewhat unanswered. And if that is the case, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Again, unless it's just a case of, no, he is definitely done, but he's going to be doing something on Raw or at WrestleMania, and we need him protected as possible, because I can maybe understand the logic of, if he's beating, again, i.e. a John Cena on Monday for the US Championship, then he kind of needs to be protected with him dropping the NXT Championship. But at the same time, in the wider continuity of things, who's watching this? You know what I mean? What are the casual fans going to think? The casual fan that watches Raw on Monday, it's that big audience, let's say it's 1.8, 1.9, maybe even 2 million viewers. How many of them are even going to know that Bron Breakker lost to Carmelo Hayes? Does it really matter? I don't think they will. And everyone knows the game at the moment. Everyone knows it's a work, and you just do the favors on the way out. That's what you do, right? So, yeah, I'm not sure. David Burke says, a great show, as always. As Steffi Jenks says, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Indeed, thank you very much for all of your support this evening throughout the watch-along and this post-show reaction. As I mentioned, we are going to be doing one for WrestleMania this evening and for a post-show for WrestleMania 2. And also tomorrow, then, it's going to be WrestleMania Night 2. So we'll be doing a watch-along and a post-show once again. Busy weekend of wrestling content. And we wouldn't have it any other way. I kind of had stopped previously doing the watch-alongs and the post-shows, but this year, after WrestleMania, I am bringing them back. Of course, the next event after WrestleMania is Backlash in Puerto Rico, so I'm going to be doing a watch-along for that. I'm going to be doing post-shows for that, because I know you guys really enjoy the watch-alongs and the post-shows as well, so I'm going to be giving you fans what you want, of course, as well. If you do want to join the WN365 roster, you can click the join button. Also, it's the pinned comment in the live chat as well. There's going to be a lot of really fun stuff coming to being a member or being on the WN365 roster. I've got some really fun stuff planned and lined up this year for that. We're going to be bringing gameplay to the channel. You're going to see me play terribly at some wrestling games. 2K23, I know it's just come out, but I also want to wait for AEW Fight Forever to come out as well. Whenever that does, I might be waiting a lifetime, in fairness, because it was meant to be out already, and now because of the trademark stuff with GCW, there's a delay. But we'll make sure that we can bring that to the channel. I am going to also be doing some historic match and event watch-alongs with some special guests that you may know. So that's my plan as well, and I plan to have that as a bit of a hybrid thing. I think it's going to be on the channel for people that aren't members, but there are going to be some more really in-depth stuff for members as well that hopefully you guys really enjoyed too. In addition, you get your badges, your emojis, and your priority chats as well. So if you haven't already, click the join button. It really is much appreciated. As I said, a lot of stuff is going to come on this channel this year. It's the bread and butter. It's the baby. It's my entry to YouTube. It's my my passion project, certainly. And that will never, ever, ever change. Dan says, bro, Owen, where I'm from, Mania for both shows are at 8 p.m. both nights. Well, you must be in the United States on the East Coast, or at least living by East Coast time. Bebe says, hey, Owen, I've never seen you live. Love your videos. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I know we've had quite a few new subscribers here over the last few months with the news videos and all that kind of stuff. As mentioned, if you haven't, or you don't realize, or you're just tuning in for the first time, we do daily news videos, usually 2 a day at least, sometimes 1, but mostly 2 a day. WWE and AEW and just the wider wrestling news, in addition to these kind of live watch-alongs and post shows as well. What else? Steffi Jenks says, will Owen be a Flex or KG? Or will there be Flex and KG or as the guests? You have to wait and see. I can't give spoilers. You know what pro wrestling fans are like with spoilers. We can't be doing that. Axton says, I love how they're treating every premium live event as a big deal now, and it's not just WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, SummerSlam as the main ones. Well, we're getting a lot more international events, aren't we? So we're getting Backlash in Puerto Rico. We're getting Money in the Bank in London. We're going to be getting an Australian stadium show this year as well. It hasn't been announced yet, but they're in active negotiations with was it Western Australian government for a stadium show, first one since Super Showdown in 2018. Even though there was a match on that show, Undertaker versus Triple H. Oh my goodness me, it was off. Oh, Steffi Jenks says, no, will you be raging like Flex or chill and encouraging like KG? Well, again, it's kind of different with wrestling games because, and I don't want to give too much away, but all I would say is when you have wrestling games, whatever, you tend to be fighting against someone. So maybe, I don't know, let's say hypothetically, you could have, with some of the people I know, you can maybe have a 4-way match with 4 controllers and 4 people on one game. Maybe that's an idea. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's always the plan. Interesting. I'll leave it there. But there you go, guys. Appreciate you joining me for the NXT stuff this evening. As I mentioned, I will be back for WrestleMania later on. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Remember, you can join the roster by clicking the join button, or it's the pinned comment in the live chat. And I will see you all later this evening. Peace. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.